Next up, Aaron Rupp. 21.
As our special speaker tonight, I am pleased to announce our State Auditor, David Vaudt. I heard before at our county convention, for an auditor, this guy is amazing.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back in Lynn County, and whenever I get in front of a group, I always know there's a great deal of excitement because everybody starts to move into the edge of their chairs. The excitement of thinking about how I'm going to talk about numbers. I'll tell you everything is going. I promise you I will try and do this in a very clear and understandable way that you have a better perspective of what Iowa's finances look like. Bernardo's got this set up for me. I might even have you slide the screen since my microphone won't get all the way over there. But before I even begin, let me say thank you to you. The last election cycle, you gave me the opportunity to continue to serve as your taxpayers' watchdog. It's a role that I take very, very seriously. And I want to thank you for the first time of also providing a Republican governor and a House controlled by Republicans. It's made a big difference in my life down at the Capitol. I actually have friends down there this year. People that actually speak to me and like me occasionally. But thank you for all your hard work. This is a huge election cycle coming up, and it's fantastic to see such a great crowd of people that want to be actively involved in this election process. So thank you for the time and the commitment that you make to make Iowa and this nation even better. But tonight I'm going to give you just a quick update about what Iowa's budget looks like. I'm glad to tell you that once you put a Republican governor in place and a Republican House in place, things are improving. So that's the really good picture of what I'm going to give you. But I'll give you a historical perspective. I'll talk a little bit about the numbers. I'm also going to give you some challenges that are really laying ahead of Iowa as we go forward, and we have to be cautious about and be thinking about. Of course, take your questions. So first off, this is a set of numbers that helps demonstrate to you that when you hear and see things through the media, you're only getting part of the story. And this chart will show you that in the very first column of numbers here, reported expenditures, that is Iowa's general fund budget. So whenever you hear or see something through the media, that is the set of numbers that they're talking about. So keep in mind, that would be like you or I talking about our checking account. However, if you go look at that second column of numbers, those are all the general fund services costs that we have shifted to and paid for with other funds and special accounts. So think of that as being your charge card. We all know it doesn't matter if you pay for it with paper check or if you pay for it with plastic cards, it's still an operating cost, and that's what it reflected over here on the right-hand side. The main thing I want you to see is there's another 6 to up to 18% of the cost of providing general services that no one is communicating to the public because we're only telling you what our checking account costs are, and that really distorts what Iowa's spending habits look like. Now, how have we been able to do that, put all these costs to other funds and special accounts? A big piece you'll see up there has been the federal stimulus money. The money that we received over the last several years to help pay for times when the recession hit. In fiscal year 9, 10, and 11, the state of Iowa received over $1 billion from the federal government to help pay for general fund services. Now, we received a lot more than that from the federal government for roads and bridges and so forth, but just for things like education and Medicaid and so forth, over $1 billion. However, that still wasn't enough, so we took another $1 billion from these other funds and special accounts in order to balance our budget. And that's what we've been doing over the last several years and needed to really get corrected. This chart shows you that back in fiscal year 11, when there was a Democrat governor and the House and Senate were controlled by the Democrats, we had almost $700 million of one-time money paying for ongoing expenses. A very, very bad habit. You'll see the bright piece of that is the federal stimulus package, about $300 million, and then about $400 million from other funds and special accounts. The really good news is, fiscal year 12 budget that we're in right now, that was adopted last year, we reduced from $700 million down to $100 million of one-time money that we're using. And the governor's proposal for fiscal year 13 reduces that down to $59 million. Not where we want to be. We want to be using zero one-time money to pay for ongoing expenses. But the good news is we're headed in the right direction at a very, very fast pace. Here are the numbers. If you actually take a look at the revenues and expenditures for the state, the main thing I want you to see is we had a spending gap back in fiscal year 11 of $764 million. That's how much more we were spending than our projected ongoing revenue stream. Really good news is fiscal year 12, we dropped it down to $220 million spending gap, and the governor's proposal reduces it again to $139 million. Once again, not where we want to be, but headed in the direction we want to be going. Here's a look just quickly at the revenue numbers, and these are the numbers that when they develop the budgets for each of these fiscal years, the revenue projections they're working with. The main thing I want you to see is look at the large increase in fiscal year 12 in the revenue numbers. A $693 million increase in revenue. Huge increase. Now, some of that increase actually took place in 11, but Iowa is very, very fortunate because our revenue stream is rebounding much faster than many, many other states. So we're very fortunate. Why do I think that's happening? Partially because we've had a very good agricultural economy. Very, very good to the state of Iowa economy overall. Also, our unemployment is much lower than it is nationally. So we've been benefiting from that. And then third, our housing market has made a very small correction compared to many other states. If you look at states like Nevada, I have friends in the state of Nevada, and people who bought homes 5 years ago and paid $250,000 for their home have them on the market today for $100,000, and they cannot sell them. That is a huge impact on the economy. So we're very, very fortunate to have the revenue growth that we've been seeing. One thing I want you to also focus on, as revenues have been growing in fiscal year 12 and projected growing in 13, how do we bring ourselves back in balance? We have to control spending. This chart shows you that back in fiscal year 11, our budget was about $6.3 million. But keep in mind, we promised allowable growth to schools, and then the state didn't fund it. So that actual funding fell to property taxpayers. So if you add in the school aid that we should have funded in fiscal year 11, which is funded in fiscal year 12 and 13, and put them on a comparative basis, you can see we kept spending in fiscal year 12 essentially the same as it was in fiscal year 11. A very small growth in fiscal year 13. And that's been the real key. When revenues are rebounding, we have to control the spending growth at the same time. This chart just shows you how that revenue growth with limited spending growth has kept us and brought us from a $700 and some million spending gap down to $139 million that we're looking at with the governor's proposal. I also like to look at spending in terms of a dollar. This chart shows you back in fiscal year 11 when we had that large spending gap. For every dollar of ongoing revenue, we were trying to spend $1.14. Now, put that in perspective, it's like a family who lives on a $50,000 annual income. They would have to put $7,000 a year on their charge card and not pay it off in order to balance their budget. Very, very bad habit to be getting into. Really good news is we've brought that down from almost $1.04 in fiscal year 2012. I can see my chart just disappeared. And then we dropped it down in the governor's proposal all the way down to $1.02. So it looks like my battery on my computer is just failing out on us, huh? So that's very good progress. What I want to point out to you is we're not where we want to be. We want to be down to $1 or less than $1, so we're living within our means. However, going from $1.14 down to $1.04, down to $1.02 is fantastic progress in a relatively short period of time. And I always remind people it took us several years to dig the hole that we got into, and it's going to take us a few years to actually climb back out of where we've been. Okay. For you that don't know, my cohort here, this is Bernardo Grandware, who's my chief of staff, and always helps me with the technology issues. Oh, okay. It's not working? To bring it back out?
Dave, can we ask a question?
Sure, yes, please.
So how do we compare with other states, along all these measures? Because I think that's where, because we're competing for Illinois jacked up their income tax rates last year, because we're trying to create jobs in the state. So how do we compare, especially with the states around us?
Very good question. It's really how does Iowa compare to the states around us and even nationwide? I will tell you that we're doing better than many other states, and that's really good. The direction we were headed previously was not in the right direction. When I contrast ourselves, I always point out that California is like the poster child of the worst financial practices. Nobody wants to go there. Regretfully, our neighboring state, Illinois, has gone along with it. In fact, recently there was a study done that pointed out about a dozen other states that were headed in the same direction as California. Really good news, Iowa was not one of those. However, when I get into some of the other issues facing us, we do still have some challenges, even though we're improving the operating standpoint. Yes?
You're talking about the Republicans reversing the economics of the state government. I'd like to ask you a question about where the rubber meets the road, and that is the ever-increasing price and cost of everything that continues to escalate, with this generation having so many entities that want to take all of our money. We can't pass it on to the next generation. The next generation is so far in debt educationally, with wages decreasing, pensions decreasing. How are they even going to be able to sustain the financial monolith that this generation is creating? This is what we have to deal with. When this reaches critical mass, nobody's going to be able to afford anything. Can we ever start reversing this madness of the ever-increasing cost of everything? Can we start going in the other direction?
Yes, very, very good question. We have some huge challenges ahead of us, not only at each state level, but at the national level. One of the things that I think we've been doing over the last several years is we have been deferring our costs as far as the payment of those in the future generations. And we see that especially when we look at our pension plans and some of those types of things. So it's going to take some huge changes at the federal government level and continued change at every state level to try and bring spending under control and make sure that we're providing the government services that are truly needed and only can be provided by government, along with providing those in the most efficient and effective way. We're going to have to change our way that we deliver services and do it more effective and efficient as we've done in the past. There will be huge challenges, but that's one reason I remind the younger generation they need to be involved today, because what's happening today is going to have a huge impact on them in the future. Yes?
I noticed something interesting in the Wall Street Journal this morning. They said that in Wisconsin, the policies of Governor Walker have made it possible for their state to start looking at the possibility and actuality of getting their property taxes down. And they're looking at a decrease of 7%. Will we have a chance of something like that?
I think we will. I think Iowa has some great chances to make big improvements, but it's going to take us working together to come up with some of those solutions. And I really like some of the ideas that have taken place in Wisconsin, Indiana. There's some really good examples taking place in other states that we need to be making sure we're taking a hard look at and deciding which ones work best in Iowa.
Another big story being, the trend stops as far as the state handing out incentives, we'll pay half, whatever, thinking Vision Islands, other things, I'm worried about cities getting into financial trouble. Oftentimes in the state of Iowa, dangling the carrot. Are you seeing a reversal of that trend?
Yeah, I think so. I think definitely the programs that are used in the state of Iowa as incentives are starting to get more evaluation to say what is the true return that we're getting from those, and let's make sure that we're following through with people's commitments. I think also as we go forward, we'll continue to see more and more emphasis on that. So I think we're definitely moving in the right direction. I will tell you, both cities keep their finances in fairly good control, but there is a lot of discussion going on right now regarding TIF, tax increment financing, trying to bring a little bit more of that under control so we don't get cities that get into financial trouble from that standpoint. I'll go ahead and continue with this, and then we'll open up for more questions and stuff. What I want to do is also just point out to you a few concerns that I have for Iowa, even as we look forward just to fiscal year 13's budget, and one has been our revenue growth. This chart shows you that in fiscal year 11, we had 6.3% revenue growth. And in fiscal year 12, we're projecting 3.5%. Really good news, we're on track to meet or exceed that revenue growth. And then in fiscal year 13, we're projecting another 4.1% revenue growth. Very, very good revenue growth in the state of Iowa, especially when you look at Iowa's 20-year average annual revenue growth. It's been at about the 3.7% growth area. So we're doing very, very well. But that also means we need to be cautious, because there's still some very shaky things, not only nationally, but worldwide, that discussion at the Capitol the last couple of years. We have over $1 billion surplus. Why are we worried about what we're spending? Well, what no one tells you is what makes up that $1 billion. What I want you to know is a great deal of that is actually Iowa's cash reserve and economic emergency fund, often called by the press as the rainy day fund. We have to keep 10% of our revenue set aside in those funds for when we hit recessions and so forth. So if you take that, which is over $600 million away, when they were developing the budgets for 12 and 13, there was really only about $300 million worth of, quote, real excess monies available. Problem is, those are one-time monies. Just because you have a surplus this year doesn't mean you'll have a surplus tomorrow. So we have to be very, very careful on how we spend down those one-time monies. And I can tell you that they're doing a very good job of doing that. Some other concerns I just want you to know, salary increases keep going through. Money is now being provided to state agencies to provide for those salary increases. So that means each agency has to come up with savings, and after a certain period of time that will hit us. Also, Department of Corrections is making some major changes, especially the new prison in Fort Madison. What we really hadn't projected what the costs of that are going to be. Most people thought it was going to reduce our costs. Actually, now they're saying it's going to increase some of our costs. And we need to make sure we're planning well when we make major decisions. Challenges ahead for the future beyond 13. One thing is just federal monies that we receive. This chart shows you the amount of federal monies the state of Iowa receives. You'll see it peaking there in fiscal year 10 and 11 during that recession time, the federal stimulus package. But I want you to know, we spend about $6 billion in Iowa taxpayer money to provide general fund services, but we also get another $6 billion from the federal government to provide those general fund services. So true total costs of providing your general fund services to the state of Iowa are about $12 billion. My concern is the federal government has finally recognized it has a financial problem. As it starts to make corrective action, it means probably less dollars are going to flow back to the state, so it's going to put more pressure on us as we go forward. Another area that we really have to keep a tab on is our retirement plan. We have a defined benefit plan in the state of Iowa. This chart shows you that back at the end of fiscal year 2000, that plan was 98% funded, so only 2% underfunded. At the end of fiscal year 11, we have dropped to 80% funded. And 20% is unfunded, and what that means is our liability for that unfunded piece back at the end of 2000 was only $327 million. That liability today has grown to $5.7 billion. That's almost equal to our state general fund budget funded from state dollars. We have to keep a very close eye on this. I think Iowa will eventually have to face the decision some states are making, which is stopping doing defined benefit plans and switching new employees over to defined contribution plans, because it's just really impossible to keep up with it. We also have the federal tax cuts that are due to expire. What does that mean in Iowa? It means we're going to collect less in Iowa income tax, because federal tax is deductible in the state of Iowa in computing your Iowa tax. And because federal taxes are going to go up, it means we're going to have more deductions and we're going to pay in less. It's projected to have another $175 million impact in fiscal year 14, and we need to be planning for that. Also, with the health care changes right now, if they go into place, we're actually going to have 150,000 Iowans on Medicaid that are currently not. To put that in perspective, we currently have about 400,000 in Iowa on the Medicaid. So it's going to be a huge percentage increase, and we're going to definitely end up taking on part of those costs. So with that, I'll turn it over to any other additional questions. Yes?
Here for the state, we went to contribution system, and we're possibly able to give us, health care stuff out of bargaining. How long a year can it take out to get pay for their actual,
It's hard to say number of years, but it will take us several. Part of it, I want to remind you too, that $5.7 billion calculation is what some people would call a very conservative number, because it all depends on the assumptions used for investment returns, longevity of life, all those types of things. Some people will tell you that number could be 2 to 3 times what $5.7 billion is, so it's not going to be easy, but I think we will definitely see changes. There are states that have put into place some of those changes already, and I think they're going to come to a lot of other states as we continue to struggle, and especially as we see federal support starting to shrink. You know, before I would tell you they weren't, but I will tell you that it's very refreshing down at the Capitol to actually have people talking about the sustainability of services, actually repeating my rule number 1, which is more than you take in. It's a pretty simple rule, but we actually have people down at the Capitol talking in those terms today. So I think, yes, we're on the right direction. Yes?
The Iowa employees pay that portion of their pension?
Yes, yes. In fact, both the employer and the employee percentage contributions have been raised, and they're going up, and that's helping us. There's no doubt about it. But we still have some challenges.
How much?
They've been going up, I think, about a percentage point over the last 2 years, and continue to go up. They're scheduled to go up another half or
To what?
I think it's like around
I think the total is somewhere north of 15%.
15% of the employees paying.
That's better than I thought it was.
Yeah, it's a pretty high percentage here in the state of Iowa that we've got employees paying. How does that compare to private? I will tell you, in the private industry, most have done away with defined benefit plans. Yeah, I think that's where I think all governments are going to come back to that. How can we afford to do this? And the problem I will tell you with defined benefit plans is when they were designed, things were totally different. People used to retire, yes, at like 60 or 65, but they only used to live to their 70. Today, people retire as early as 50 or 55, live to be 85, and they're on retirement all that time. So the system was designed totally different than what it's functioning today, and that's what caused us a lot of issues with Social Security and defined benefit plans. Yes?
Start on the revenue, includes the revenue increase,
Yes.
like for example, 3.5%. Does that include inflation or does it reflect inflation?
It would reflect inflation because it's actual projected revenues for the following fiscal year and any revenue increases.
What really is, it might be zero.
Yes, that's right. But it's what they project to get. Yes?
A number of southern states have deductions for seniors for property taxes, like over 65. And consequently, perhaps maybe other states are losing older population to states with that kind of a benefit. Do you see any possibility of something like that in Iowa?
I think there's definitely a lot of focus this year will continue to be on property taxes. Right now, the discussion is commercial property taxes are too high. The problem gets to be is, keep in mind, property taxes primarily fund local government. So if we make a change to one side of the equation, how do you make up for that? I'm a true believer. I wish we could step back at some point and just start with a blank sheet of paper and say, let's look at all the other states. Everybody taxes things differently, but what would work best in Iowa based upon what everybody else does? Then sit down and say, what should we tax? How much should we tax? Then how do we share that with every service provider, state level, the county level, city and school district level, do a better job of allocating those resources and trying to make sure that we're up to speed. Right now, the tweaking of one tax gets to be very, very complicated because of that. Yes, there's a question over here. Where did most of the revenue growth come? Well, I'll tell you that Iowa's revenue stream is primarily driven by sales tax, personal income tax. Those two components account for about 80% of our total revenue stream, and both of those have been improving over the recessionary period. Yes?
Hi, I'm getting an impression from the media that college education is desperately underfunded because, the price of school and the big majors. I think the Republicans are actually blaming that. Are they spending money incorrectly? Are there areas of practice that cut through?
I think the Board of Regents is really trying to take a hard look at that to say, are we running as efficiently as possible? And obviously, they made some very difficult decisions at you and I, as far as trying to say, what can we afford to do? And I think definitely when we look at education, we want to make sure we're providing opportunities. But I think what they did at you and I was the right direction to say, if we have very few students in a particular program, can we afford to continue that program? In many cases, maybe they can go to one of the other universities and pick that up. So we have to look at what can we truly afford to do and make it affordable to students. Take a couple more questions, then we'll hang out. We'll go right there.
About 6 years ago, those people, the seniors that were on this refund up to $1,000 if they own their own home. Also, renters get that. And they were getting the full amount they could get for their income. And then when the Democrat governor came into play, he cut that down 20 or 30%, took away from the seniors because they had made a contract with the union for increases in the employees' wages. And so they stole it from the seniors and the disabled people, the veterans, and gave it to the workers.
we've got to be very, very careful how we approach our different populations. And I will tell you, I'm a true believer that we need our, quote, seniors, not only from colleges and from high schools, but our seniors in Iowa here. Because I keep reminding people, not only do they have the ability to make an impact in their community with their financial resources, but their gifts of talent and their volunteerism and stuff is so important to the state. We need to make sure that we look at all populations to make sure that we're treating everybody fairly. I appreciate the line.
Okay, one more question, and then I'll bring it back up.
Yes.
What are we doing as a state to make Iowa more business friendly? Because, I mean, so I talk about kids my age leaving the state, finding better jobs elsewhere. What can we do to bring jobs here to make people want to stay here?
Yeah. I think a lot of the things that are being done right now, trying to take a look at our tax environment, our regulation environment, are extremely important because those are what's going to drive business. And if we have business, we're going to create opportunities, and that's the real key. We can get the opportunities here. I know lots of people that will leave the state periodically. I've always reminded people, we always talk about our brain drain and how people leave after college. But part of that is because wherever you grew up, you're thinking something better someplace else. People want to go see someplace else. But I will tell you, a great deal of those people, once they've seen the other place, they appreciate what's here in Iowa much more. They want to raise a family. They want to come back. And they're real key to say, how do we make sure that we have good businesses here that will employ these good, well-educated individuals in the future? Well, I want to just say thank you for your attention. Thank you for your interest.